World War I, one of the deadliest wars in history, was the first major conflict involving all leading world countries. To try and ease tensions between the Balkan states and Austria-Hungary, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, arranged a tour around Bosnia-Herzegovina with his wife Sophie. The war was effectively started by a young Bosnian Serb named Gavrilo Princip when he fired 2 shots at Archduke Franz Ferdinand's vehicle, instantly killing him and his wife. Princip had links to a Serbian nationalist group called the Black Hand. This act of terror gave Austria-Hungary a reason to attack its Balkan enemy, Serbia. Soon after the invasion of Serbia, Russia came to the aid of Serbia, which angered Germany. Soon, countries were joining to support their allies, forming the Allied and Central Powers. After 4 years of brutal fighting, the Germans were overextended and low on resources. The citizens back in Germany were poor, starving, and in turn, rioting. In the fall of 1918, the German general Ferdinand Foch accepted the armistice proposed by the Allies. Almost a year later, on the 28th of June, 1919, 32 countries, including the Big Four, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, British Prime Minister David Lloyd George, French Premier Georges Clemenceau, and Italian Prime Minister Vittorio Orlando, came together at the Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles in France. Here, the Allies decided the fate of the Central Power countries. Out of the Big Four, President Wilson's 14 points proposal was the least taxing on the Germans and sought to prevent further wars through the League of Nations. However, Clemenceau, furious at the damage done to France and her people and determined to cripple Germany's economy, military, and territory, disregarded Wilson's proposal. Furthermore, even though England suffered many casualties, Lloyd George didn't want to cripple Germany's economy, but wanted to restrict them to where they were still functional but couldn't build a military. The main effects of the treaty were lost territory, heavy reparations, and the disarming of the German state. Germany lost all its colonies overseas, its colonies in France, Belgium, Czechoslovakia, and Denmark. Germany also lost many of its natural resources, such as coal mines, to France. Along with this, Germany had to give the Allies coal, livestock, ships, timber, and other resources, along with large payments of cash. The German government was left disarmed, poor, and in no position to improve their situation. The treaty was signed by the German government under heavy protest. Terrorists assassinated politicians who they believed were responsible for the treaty, and right-wing Germans regarded signing the treaty as a betrayal of the German state, as Article 231 stated that Germany and its allies are solely responsible for the war. As a direct result of devastating political and economic crisis, the people of Germany lacked faith in the new government and called on political groups for drastic changes. One of the many groups was the German Workers' Party. In 1919, Adolf Hitler joined the party and changed the name to the National German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party for short. Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party addressed the feeling of inferiority felt by the German people with aggressive nationalism. On February 24, 1920, the Nazi Party adopted the 25-point plan, which detailed the demands from the government by the party. Hitler's ideas reached out to many people, from poor workers wanting an equal share of profits to wealthy industries fighting communism. By 1923, the Nazi Party had 17,000 members, or roughly 3/10,000ths of the German population. Nazism didn't gain wide support until the Great Depression in 1923. Increasingly more Germans turned to Nazism in hopes of economical help, political strength, and national pride. Soon, the Nazi Party turned into a huge political organization with special divisions for professional people, women, and youth. In 1932, the party had 39% of the Reichstag, and Hitler had 13.5 million votes, compared to Reichstag President Paul von Hindenburg's 19.25 million. By 1934, Hitler was chancellor under Hindenburg, Hitler had total control over Germany. He used violence, propaganda, and anti-Semitism to control his opponents and brainwash the people of Germany. Frederick Tubach, an American-born German who moved back to Germany at age 3, says about Nazism. People wanted to believe in it because it was so comforting. Meanwhile, the violence that had filled German cities from the end of World War I ceased, or seemed to. So people found it easier to believe because on the surface, things seemed calmer. Once Hitler came to power in 1933, he and the SS immediately started to push the brown shirts into the background. Violence had to be kept out of sight of most Germans. Public executions were no longer announced by order of Himmler. Everything was to be kept as quiet as possible to allow the Nazis to consolidate power and win over the German people. With the combined hatred of the Allied European countries and the plan of making the Nazi state a world empire, the Nazis began their plan in 1938. In that year, the Germans annexed Austria, and the next year occupied Czechoslovakia. Later, in 1939, the Germans invaded Poland and started World War II. Soon after the invasion, Poland's allies declared war on Germany. During the war, Adolf Hitler ordered a campaign to kill all European Jews, known now as the Holocaust. In addition, another 5 million Gypsies, Poles, Slavs, and political opponents of the Nazis were killed. Towards the end of the war, Adolf Hitler realized the war could not be won. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler and his fiancée, Eva Braun, committed suicide in his bunker in Berlin. It is not hard to see how the Treaty of Versailles' harsh punishments on the German people led to the formation of the radical Nazi Party. However, these punishments led to violence, poverty, and paved a way for the start of World War II. Through the conflict of World War I and the compromise of the Treaty of Versailles, the Nazi Party formed out of political strife, gained power, and ultimately started the deadliest conflict in world history.